According to media narratives, the current global landscape is portrayed as a fierce struggle for dominance between the United States and China. Questions arise about the trajectory of the United States. Is it experiencing a decline? Will the future be characterized as a Chinese century, with China potentially surpassing the United States? However, a closer examination reveals a different perspective, challenging the notion that China is already a superpower. In certain aspects, China and the United States present competitive similarities. China boasts a population nearly 4 times larger than that of the United States, and both nations command sizable territories, enabling them to exert influence over their respective continents. While both countries have significant international financial investments, the United States maintains a global military presence, whereas China has a primary foreign military base in Djibouti. Concerning military capabilities, China stands out as the sole nation considered a near peer to the United States. Both possess modern intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons. Despite the U.S. holding a larger nuclear arsenal, China retains the capacity to strike the U.S. mainland. Notably, China's missile technology is contemporary, distinct from Russia's massive Cold War-era arsenal. However, it's crucial to define superpower status precisely, and China hasn't reached that point yet. The term superpower originated in 1944 during World War II, denoting a state dominant and powerful enough to wield influence and project power globally. Initially, it referred to 3 nations with extensive empires or puppet states worldwide: the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union. These states not only possess the power to influence global affairs, but also play an essential role in any international action, as decisions are typically made in consultation with them. This elevated their status to one of near invulnerability, with only one Achilles heel: time. The trio of superpowers faced an inevitable decline. The United Kingdom, once boasting a formidable empire that spanned the globe, experienced a gradual collapse in the post-World War II decades. Although the UK remains a potent nuclear-armed nation, its influence on the world stage has significantly diminished. For a considerable period, the US and USSR stood as almost equal global powers until the communist government in the USSR crumbled, leading to the secession of many conquered countries from its sphere of influence. Despite Russia's current leader Vladimir Putin projecting an image of Russia as a superpower, the invasion of Ukraine highlighted a harsh reality. The world, in a collective response, threw support behind Ukraine, subjecting Russia to sanctions and isolating it from much of the global economy. This underscores that contemporary Russia is far less influential than its Soviet predecessor. This leaves the United States as the lone superpower on the world stage, right? While discussions about the decline of the U.S. persist, recent events haven't significantly eroded its global prestige and influence. The U.S. remains a crucial member of NATO, holds a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, and boasts the world's largest economy. With the highest military spending globally and a continually advancing state-of-the-art military, concerns over the U.S.'s perceived instability might stem from its role as an indispensable global force. The fear lingers regarding potential consequences if its leadership were to fall into the wrong hands, or if the country became embroiled in another devastating civil conflict. The uncertainty about who would fill the void becomes apparent. Recently, China's ascent has garnered considerable attention, establishing itself as a dominant force regionally and expanding its influence beyond Asia. While claiming Taiwan as part of its territory, China has refrained from direct actions against the island nation. Tensions arise in the South China Sea, where China's artificial islands have sparked conflicts with neighboring countries like Vietnam. In these standoffs, China often prevails due to its unmatched military strength in the region. On a global scale, China's robust economic sector provides significant leverage over other nations, potentially allowing it to restrict essential supplies if countries defy its interests. Extensive investments in Africa position the continent as a potential ally in the future. Collectively, these factors paint a picture of China as an ascending superpower. However, appearances can be deceptive. In the early 21st century, China's rapid expansion dominated global discussions, yet various factors have converged to impede its progress. One major factor, and possibly the most significant, is a looming population challenge. While China currently holds the title of the world's most populous country, it is projected to lose that status as early as 2023 to India. This shift is primarily attributed to China's persistently low birth rate, a consequence of its prolonged one-child policy spanning decades, leading many couples to have only one child, often a boy. This policy resulted in a substantial gender gap, with numerous young Chinese men, dubbed bare branches by the media, remaining without spouses. Although the policy has been revoked, ingrained habits persist, and it's uncommon for Chinese families to have multiple children. As the population ages, potential long-term problems may arise. Another potential challenge on the horizon for China's future is closely tied to its economic ascent. The country's economic expansion, a key driver of its rise, was made possible when the Chinese Communist Party departed from strict adherence to Marxism and embraced a state-run capitalist economy. China became a major player in global manufacturing, particularly in technology, contributing significantly to its influence. However, a growing reluctance to invest in China has emerged due to concerns about the conditions under which products are manufactured, often involving prisoners without adequate safety protections. With the rapid dissemination of news through the internet, China finds it increasingly difficult to keep such practices hidden. This shift raises the possibility of China losing its economic advantage, as numerous companies have relocated their manufacturing operations to other countries. India, South Korea, Vietnam, and Taiwan have all become prominent manufacturing hubs, with Taiwan dominating the world's semiconductor production, a crucial component for virtually all modern computerized devices. The interest in conquering Taiwan may stem from China's desire to control this vital industry. However, unless China can achieve this goal swiftly, the international community is likely to rally in defense of Taiwan. This raises the critical question: could China emerge victorious in such a conflict? China showcases its military might through frequent war games near Taiwan and positioning its ships in neutral waters, projecting strength primarily through intimidation. While China's navy boasts modern and powerful vessels, its military hasn't faced significant combat challenges for decades. Despite being one of the few nuclear powers in Asia and possessing the largest arsenal, China may be the biggest regional power, but it doesn't necessarily hold the same status globally. The United States, with its superior military strength, likely outclasses China on the international stage. China may prevail in most local conflicts, but if the United States becomes involved, China's options would likely be to step back or resort to the threat of nuclear weapons. This scenario clearly highlights the current superpower dynamic. However, the most significant challenges to China's potential superpower status might arise internally rather than from external rivals. While China has been frequently considered a potential second superpower, its path towards modernization could diminish that likelihood. The increasingly educated and politically active Chinese population is realizing that they've had limited influence over the government for over 70 years. Historically, protests against the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, have been harshly suppressed, but the unprecedented scale of organized protests during the COVID-19 lockdowns presents a unique challenge for the typically resilient CCP. The handling of the pandemic may become a critical factor in China's future trajectory. When COVID-19 emerged, China swiftly implemented strict lockdowns in cities where the virus appeared, maintaining these measures until cases subsided. Unlike lockdowns in other countries that primarily led to the closure of businesses and long grocery store lines, China's lockdowns were comprehensive, with residents prohibited from leaving their homes. Initially deemed successful, subsequent waves of the virus prompted the re-imposition of stringent lockdowns. Even 2.5 years into the pandemic, major Chinese cities continued to face lockdowns with rules as stringent as those in 2020. The Chinese Communist Party is currently confronting its most formidable challenge to date, with a surge of young protesters holding blank papers as a symbol of their silenced voices. This creative gesture also serves to protect them from potential legal repercussions for expressing dissenting views. The extensive lockdowns have triggered a significant decline in tourism and foreign investment in China, as apprehensive outsiders are wary of visiting a place where the possibility of being stranded for months due to an outbreak looms. The prospect of enjoying Shanghai Disneyland loses its appeal when there's a risk of being confined and directed to an on-site quarantine facility. It's a cautionary tale for those wishing for certain experiences. These developments have rendered previous predictions somewhat far-fetched. Throughout much of the 21st century, experts argued that China's ascent was unstoppable, potentially surpassing the United States in both economic strength and military power. Some even asserted that China had already achieved superpower status, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region, according to U.S. military analysts. While China projects itself as a superpower, its influence beyond its immediate sphere hinges primarily on economic deals. If these economic ties diminish, China could find itself relegated to a regional power, surrounded by rapidly emerging competitors. Is the pinnacle of China's rise now in the rearview mirror? A decade ago, some analysts were skeptical about China attaining superpower status, citing factors such as an aging population, growing dissatisfaction with the government, and a significant environmental concern. China's rapid industrialization has left it among the most polluted countries globally, with several major cities grappling with hazardous air quality. These challenges could significantly impact the quality of life for China's aging population, compounded by a low birth rate that may lead to a substantial decrease in the working-age population within a few decades. Another crucial factor is China's reliance on the global economy. Despite having a robust manufacturing-based economy, China relies on international customers to sustain its economic momentum. However, increasing global hesitancy to engage with China, driven by COVID policies, ethical concerns, and a history of arresting foreign businessmen and journalists, poses a threat. If China loses substantial trade deals, it could face energy and raw material shortages, potentially causing internal instability and further protests that might challenge the rule of the Chinese Communist Party. A pivotal question emerges: is China an attractive destination for immigrants? Despite concerns about job displacement, immigrants play a vital role in a country's prosperity. Beyond compensating for a domestic workforce shortfall, immigrants can bring substantial economic benefits, akin to a high-powered sports draft. Chinese-American professor Amy Chua suggests that China might struggle to attract immigrants in the future, citing other countries offering more appealing incentives. China's authoritarian practices and uncertain future serve as potential obstacles. Regrettably, many of these challenges are unlikely to change. Rather than building on its success, China faces a situation where its major issues act like a ball rolling downhill. The demographic challenge, often referred to as the population bomb, is a long-term issue for China that may prove difficult to reverse. Despite current efforts to boost birth rates, China is experiencing limited success. Similarly, attracting talent from abroad remains challenging, and without a substantial shift in the government's public affairs approach, both immigrants and corporations may be hesitant to invest in the country. The prospect of change hinges on a significant overhaul of China's governmental system. However, even if such a transformation occurs, the future remains uncertain. If China's ongoing student protests lead to meaningful change, akin to Russia in the 1980s, with a new leader embracing reform and introducing democracy, the dynamics of the country would shift dramatically. The Communist Party's hold would loosen, allowing new forces to emerge. This extensive change would likely redirect China's focus inward for a significant period, with the CCP's expansionist efforts taking a back seat. A transitional China might be less inclined towards military conflict, and foreign investors may adopt a cautious stance until the direction becomes clearer. The outcome could be a stronger, more democratic China capable of competing globally. However, this transformation would take time, distancing China further from achieving global superpower status, while the U.S. continues to consolidate its role. The question then arises: will the U.S. remain the sole superpower indefinitely? On the surface, it appears likely. China, the closest competitor, seems to be moving further away, while Russia is increasingly isolated and appears cornered. India, the world's fastest-growing country, stands as a potential contender, yet its current focus remains largely internal. Additionally, serious border conflicts with its nuclear neighbor, Pakistan, pose challenges. Although India is poised to evolve into a great power over the next few decades, its ambitions for superpower status remain unclear. India, displaying characteristics of a developing nation in many rural areas, such as a low literacy rate, has shown little inclination toward expansionism. The most probable contender for a rival superpower might not be an individual country. With a population of 446 million and an area of 1.6 million square miles, second only to China and Russia respectively, the European Union, EU, emerges as a compelling candidate. This political union of 27 member states, primarily covering Western Europe, continues to grow despite the recent departure of Britain. The EU, boasting a nuclear power in France and consistently high Human Development Index scores across its states, appears attractive for potential members. If Russia's expansionist ambitions are thwarted, the EU stands to gain significantly, offering a secure option for countries concerned about Russian targeting. Could the EU eventually rival the United States? The primary challenges lie in a lack of unified foreign policy and a relatively modest military presence. However, if the EU's influence continues to expand, member states may gravitate towards greater integration, forming a more cohesive unit. Given the close relations between most EU nations and the United States, a scenario where the two superpowers align to create a dominant global alliance becomes conceivable.